This is a story of how one man with one chassis design tried to preserve and promote the skills of the Japanese motorsport engineering industry. This is not just the story of the car in the title of the video, the GT300 Toyota GT86. Instead, this is the story of the mother chassis. In about 2011, Masaki Bando, the boss of Super GT's governing body GTA, was quite worried. In Japan, there'd been a significant trend towards small teams importing and running European GT cars in the Super GT Championship. In fact, more and more FIA GT3 cars were coming to race in Super GT's GT300 category, rather than those teams building the wonderfully varied specials that had made the series famous. As a result of this, he and others like the founder of Dome, Minoru Hayashi, felt that the local level of engineering talent in Japan was falling, and that the decline in engineering ability would be felt right across Asia, where the motorsport scene was growing rapidly. Bando had an idea, though some people say it was Hayashi's idea, that Dome, the only independent organisation in Japan capable of making a modern carbon fibre monocoque car, made a new Super GT GT300 kit car. The idea was that Dome would create a basic package of parts which would include everything a team would need to build the chassis up into a running car. Everything, in fact, except for the bodywork. That would remain the responsibility of the customer team. This is why it was called the mother chassis. One chassis could create a whole range of different cars. The whole concept was likely, at least in part anyway, a closely related development of the Nissan Leaf Nismo RC, although that car didn't actually use a mother chassis and instead had a bespoke composite tub made by Dome. Initially, Dome's founder Hayashi was not keen on the idea, but Bando knew that Hayashi had already started to design his own project, a sports car that he called his Isaku. It would be a front-engined car fitted with a V6 engine and weighing about 900 kilograms. The renders you see here are two of Hayashi's early car concepts. For this car, a bespoke chassis was being designed, but Bando persuaded Hayashi to change the project into the mother chassis concept. The proposed car could be used for road or race applications, and ultimately it did find use on both the road and track. We'll get back to that. The initial sketches showed a simple structural chassis, capable of being built into either a front or mid-engined car. A carbon fibre monocoque version was advertised, along with a cheaper version made from extruded aluminium. Both the metal and composite versions of the chassis had significant safety structures built into them, including front and rear impact structures. Ultimately, though, the extruded aluminium metal chassis never got built. The package Dome built up by request of Bando featured everything but the engine of the car, and of course the bodywork. It was a proper race car design with double wishbone suspension and a Hewland sequential gearbox. The early concepts shown off for what the mother chassis could actually look like when built into a car were fairly wild, it's fair to say, and at least some, like this one, stemmed from Hayashi's personal desire to make this into his ultimate road car. An all-electric road-going sports car with an equally wild design was also proposed by Dome. I think this was never really a serious proposal, more like it was a concept vision created to show what the mother chassis could really do, what it could be used for, and to highlight the fact it could be used as the basis of an electric car as well. Mooncraft boss Takuya Ura proposed a road-going version of the famous Daytona prototype-based Shiden GT300 car, which would have used the mother chassis rather than the Riley Daytona prototype chassis. This mother chassis version of the Shiden would have been made available either in GT300 racing configuration or in road-going trim. Sadly, that never came to pass because Ura had some other ideas for a different model in his head, and we will get back to that as well. Some other designers in Japan proposed some production road-going cars based on the mother chassis concept, and some of them looked utterly fantastic, although they did look a little bit like they'd come straight off the set of a science fiction movie, and also some of them did seem a bit fanciful. A centre seat layout, as suggested in a couple of these designs, may not have actually really worked with the mother chassis anyway. As Bando had got his way and the chassis was being adapted to racing more than road use, the official chassis designation was actually changed from being a Dome chassis to a GTA chassis, Bando's organisation, and the official name of the chassis became the GTA M101. The tub itself would be constructed using Dome's proprietary UOVA concept. This production technique does away with the honeycomb core found in most composite monocoque chassis, thus reducing the cost and production production time for each monocoque to be built, and the process to actually make the monocoque was massively simplified, and it reduced the production time for each tub down to only 30% of the number of hours required to produce a conventional honeycomb monocoque. Despite looking a lot like the DTM common chassis, the mother chassis was very different in that it should not be seen as a safety cell. The chassis wasn't actually crash tested, and Dome made it clear that it should be considered as a chassis only and not a safety cell. However, the roll cage and seats and the fuel cell and all of those type of components were all designed to meet FIA specification, while the tub itself actually met the regulations of GT500 cars from the 2009 season. The actual chassis was found to be significantly stiffer than the DTM chassis had been, partly because the DTM chassis front and rear bulkheads were believed to be a bit too thin, but also partly because of how Dome had actually made the mother chassis. Notably though, the mother chassis was heavier than the DTM monocoque. It weighed in at 63.5 kilograms, and with the roll cage added, it was another 83 kilos. The chassis was specifically designed with a wide range of mounting points, far more than it actually needed, so that teams could develop their own cars around the chassis and not be compromised by the available mounting points. The kit of parts offered by GTA for teams wanting to use the mother chassis to build a new GT300 car were finalised in time for cars to be built for the 2014 season, albeit probably not the start of the 2014 season. The parts included a 4.5 litre normally aspirated V8 engine, which was quite clearly a Nissan VK45DE as used in LMP2, but not wanting to identify a Japanese car manufacturer on cars that could have very different bodywork such as Toyota or Honda, GTA insisted that the engine could only be referred to as the GTA engine, and if you called it a Nissan engine, you would get a slightly miffed email from GTA. The front floor, gearbox, ECU and uprights were all also part of the standard GTA kit used by all of the new GT300 cars. So this all meant that in GT300 from 2014 onwards there would be 3 rulebooks in operation: JAF GT300, FIA GT3 and the new mother chassis cars. The first car built to the new mother chassis rules was based on the Toyota GT86, and that created the slightly odd situation where it would compete in the same class against the Subaru BRZ, but that car had been built to the JAF GT300 regulations. So you had 2 cars built to utterly different rulebooks and in mechanical terms completely different to one another, but they were both in theory based on the same production car. In reality, very little, if anything, more than a few fragments of body panels were used from the road-going GT86 on the MC86 as the GT300 car was known. The front badge and the headlight lenses were also used. That first GT86 was developed by Dome, but to stop Dome getting a huge advantage over every other Japanese team and constructor, the company decided to act like a smaller organisation. Therefore, it just sketched out what it thought the car should look like and refused to use its own wind tunnel or CFD capability to develop the MC86. It meant the engineers simply had to rely on their significant experience alone. Surprisingly, the car didn't actually make its race debut in Super GT. Instead, it made its first race in the Thai Supercar Challenge at the Chang International Circuit, as GTA and Bando wanted to show that it could be used right across Asia. Indeed, at the time, GTA had this idea of massive Asian expansion and the GT300 class becoming the dominant GT racing class right across Asia, which probably wasn't a bad idea. The mother chassis concept caught the attention of a number of teams. One Thai team proposed to use the mother chassis to build a Toyota Corolla, while Mooncraft announced that it would create a mid-engined Lotus Evora mother chassis car. And yes, I've seen the comments, we are doing a video on that. At the start of the 2015 season, the Dome MC86 had attracted a number of customers in Super GT, namely Team Mac, Up Garage and Team Tsuchiya. Meanwhile, the Thai Arto team continued with its car in its native land. The mother chassis took its debut win in the Super GT race at Sportsland Sugo the next year, and the best MC86 finished 9th in the championship. However, partway through the 2015 season, new management at Dome felt that the company could have been a lot more aggressive with the development of the MC86, and that it proposed that they develop a new, faster and more aerodynamically efficient version of the car. This time, a lot of CFD work went into the new bodywork. Mechanically, the car was mostly the same, with a few changes within the fuel cell, but the bodywork was all new, albeit still based on the GT86. The new MC86B, as it was known, had much lower drag than the original car and clearly outperformed it. The most obvious change between the MC86 and MC86B is the revised cooling package on the bonnet of the latter car. The front wheel arch extensions were completely revised, with the rear face being utterly different between the old and new models. The air scoop on the front of the rear wheel arch had also been revised on the MC86B. In Super GT, teams using the FIA GT3 rules cars were a little bit unhappy with the arrival of the mother chassis cars, especially the GT86 and 86B, as it was becoming clear that in shorter races the MC86B could do the full 250km race without making a tyre change, whereas the wear on the European GT3 cars was just too high to get through the race without a tyre stop. One reason for this is that the MC86B and other Mother chassis cars ran at a minimum weight of about 200 kilograms behind the GT3 cars. Interestingly, the GTA parts kit for the Mother chassis didn't include dampers. Dome designed the car with its own bespoke dampers, but almost all customer teams opted to use commercially available Öhlins dampers, mainly because they were cheaper than the Dome dampers, and also the Öhlins dampers were well known and well established in Japan. The MC86B won 2 races in 2016, and crucially, it won the championship, ahead of the Toyota Prius. Yeah, I said Prius, the link's up there. Since then, the MC86 hasn't actually won any more titles, but 11 years after it was very first introduced, the mother chassis and the MC86 is still racing in Super GT, albeit only one example of the MC86 remains active in the series, the Team Mac car. I think it's fair to say that the mother chassis concepts didn't really take off as intended, but enough were made to say that the project was a success. The MC86 was actually just the first of a series of fascinating mother chassis designs, which we will have to get back to. If you've enjoyed this brief 250km introduction to the Super GT mother chassis, then don't forget to hit like and subscribe, as we will be taking a much closer look at some of these designs very soon indeed. For now though, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon, somewhere in the pit lane.